Hello everyone, this is Professor Robert Solis. Welcome to this next video lesson. We are going to, in this particular lab, focus on the repetition structure to draw a diamond. So the idea is that the user is going to enter an odd number and then we are going to draw a diamond based on that. Now this is based on my old C++ class, but I thought we would take this and create a graphical user interface type of project with the same principles. The user must enter an odd number and then we create a diamond. If they enter anything other than an odd number, we got to give them some sort of a message box, say for example, that says invalid input. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and use a flowchart to help us design this particular program. So I wouldn't expect an introductory student to be able to do this right off the bat. I think you're going to need some help with this. So let's say that your boss, who's the systems analyst, he comes up, he's like the big picture kind of person. He's thinking, okay, this is the solution right here. This is the answer of how we are going to create a diamond based on these stars or asterisks. And this is the flow chart of what you must go through. So let's take it step by step, and I'll show you how we're going to convert this into a C# program. Okay, let me first of all start Visual Studio. So I'm going to go over here, Visual Studio, and let me go ahead and create a new project. So we'll say New Project, and this is going to be a C# program. Windows Form application is what we want. Over here, we're going to type in C# Lab 9 and draw. Well, this is really dealing with the repetition structure, repetition, specifically to draw a diamond. Okay? All right, so we'll give it a couple seconds. And because this original requirement is for C++, as you can see over here, actually, let me switch over this way. That's it. This is originally from my C++ program, so I'm going to have to modify this and change it so that the graphical user interface that we're going to create, I'm going to replace it into here. But let's just take this old C# or C++ approach and turn it into a beautiful graphical user interface. Okay, so let me go ahead and open up the toolbox, and I don't need this output panel here. So toolbox, let me go ahead and pin that down. And I'm thinking we're definitely going to need a button and a label and also a text box. Okay, so we're going to have to ask the user to enter an odd number. So let me go over here to the Properties panel, and where it says Font, I'm going to change the font size to 12 points. And we'll say enter an odd number. Now before I continue, let me go back over here to the flow chart. Let's see here. It says clear the previous entry. Well, we haven't done anything like that yet. Declarations. Okay, I've got all this. We're going to read the user input, and then from the user input, we are going to calculate what spaces to draw. Okay, so actually, I don't have any type of requirement based on this flow chart to make sure that the user has in fact entered the correct number. So let's just assume for this intro class that they are going to enter the correct number, and then later on, maybe in the semester or definitely in the next programming class, which is more intermediate, we'll talk about verifying that the user has in fact entered the correct number. So I guess I just got to ask the user to enter an odd number, and so they're going to put that number over here. I'm going to make the form just a little bit bigger. So they'll enter the number into here. And then let's go ahead and draw a label over here where we can draw a diamond. Let's see here. It looks like, I think, didn't I ask for the number to be like from 1 to 15 if the user enters a number greater than 15? Okay, so we want the number to be from 1 to 15, say for example. So really what I should do is take that label and modify it a little bit more. Enter an odd number from 1 to 15. That's better. And then they'll put the answer in here. That font size should also be 12 points. So let me change that font size because this is 12 points. So let me go ahead and make this 12 points, make an adjustment. Okay, that looks good. Now let me place a label down here where we can draw our diamond. Okay, so I guess I could just take this guy over here, copy and paste it, right? And then I'm going to have to make sure that the auto size property is set to false. And I'm going to make it look something like this. Looks pretty good. And kind of make it look like it's a square. Let's see what that looks like. Well, first of all, the text must always be in the upper left-hand corner. And that way, as the diamond grows because of the user number entering a bigger number, then we have plenty of space to accommodate that. So I need to change the font to a monospaced font. Right now, I have the Microsoft Sans Serif. Let me click this drop down. Actually, I can just simply click the ellipsis, and then that'll bring this up. Let's select Courier New. Now, Courier is a monospaced font, and that just simply means that every single letter has the exact same space. Whether it's a letter I or the letter W, every letter occupies the same amount of space. Okay, so that's a monospaced font. It's on the upper left-hand corner. Let's see here. Let me go ahead and put a border. Let's do a fixed single border. That's fine. And I want the text to initially be nothing. So I'm going to go over here to the text property, get rid of that. So this is just blank. Okay, looking good so far. And maybe what we'll do is we'll just put a button over here underneath. And for this button, something like draw diamond. Now I think I can select a bigger font size. So over here, what does 12 points look like? So when we type in 12, yeah, that looks pretty good. Seems to be consistent with everything that we've got. And over here, instead of form 1, so let me select this. We'll change that text to draw a diamond calculator. Let's get rid of the minimize and the maximize box by double-clicking over here and double-clicking over here. And then I can reduce the size of everything to something like this. All right, let me save my work. Now, I didn't give you any indication of what the names would be for the various items. So let me go ahead and select the text box, and we'll just come up with something logical like txt user num. Right? The user is going to enter their number into here. This is going to be displaying the result, so we'll just simply say LBL result. And then we have this button over here called draw diamond, so we'll say btn draw diamond. All right, let me go ahead and click save all. And it looks like I've got everything all set up. Okay, looking good. I don't need the toolbox. I don't need the properties. Let me go ahead and double click on draw diamond. So that takes us into the code area, and now I'm going to be going back and forth with this flowchart, and we're going to implement that here in our C# program. Okay, so in terms of clear the previous entry, let me get back to that. Let's move on over here to the declarations. So let me go ahead and say declarations. And it looks like they want counter and blah, 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 all as whole numbers. Okay, so that's an integer. So over here, I'll say int counter. What else do they want? User input. Okay, so int user input. Spaces to draw. Okay, so int spaces to draw. Stars to draw. Okay, so int stars to draw. Now, do you understand why you need these variables? No. This is an intro class. And so I'm trying to help you out by giving you this flowchart, and then in a more advanced class, you're going to be able to create these flowcharts yourself. So this is an advanced programmer saying, okay, just do what you have here in this flowchart, create this program for me, or you implement this program in C# or Java or C or whatever the language happens to be. So all we are doing is acting as translators, and what it's saying for me to do is to declare all of these variables as whole numbers. Well, since we are programming in C#, we've just done that right here. All right, what do we do next? Read the user input. Notice that this rhombus is for either reading or for writing. So we need to read the user input. So over here, that's in the get user input section. So the user input is going to be convert.toInt32, whatever is inside of txt. Ah, there it is. txt user num. Double click, .text. Okay, that fulfills this part right here where it says read input. Now what am I supposed to do? Well, it looks like I have some calculations to perform. That's what this rectangle represents. It's a process. So let me go over here to CSharp and I'll say calculations. All right. All right, in the calculations section, what am I supposed to do? Assign spaces to draw some sort of a formula here, half the user input. Okay, so spaces to draw is going to be half the user input. So in other words, user input divided by 2. Now this is an integer division. It's not really important for you to know that in terms of the translation, but I'm letting you know this is integer division. So if this were 5, 5 divided by 2 would be 2. It's not 2.5 because this is an integer, so it's going to ignore the fractional part. It's not even going to round it up. Let's say that the answer was 2.9. Well, the integer portion of that is 2. So spaces to draw will be whatever the user input is divided by 2 in terms of an integer division. Okay, so that takes care of this section, and now I have this shape over here, the diamond shape, which is kind of consequential or interesting because we are going to be drawing a diamond. But the way that you interpret a diamond is it's either an if statement or a while statement. Put more generally, it's a selection structure or a repetition structure. Well, let's see if I can follow through. If this thing is true, then I go through here and look at that. I come right back over here. So do you see the shape that I'm making right here? Looks like a loop. So this diamond represents, it could be a while statement, it could be a for statement, it could be a do while statement, but it's definitely a repetition structure. If this thing didn't come back, then this would just simply be an if statement or a switch statement, say for example. Okay, so we'll use the while statement. While stars to draw is less than or equal to user input. Okay, so over here, while stars to draw is less than or equal to the user input. And I'm going to put open and close braces right here. Okay, so while stars to draw is less than or equal to the user input. Is that what I did? While stars to draw. How come it's giving me... Okay, let's see here. It says use of unassigned local variable stars to draw. Ah, okay. So I'm entering into a while statement, and it's saying, are you sure you want to do that? You didn't even initialize stars to draw. Okay, well, in this case, I'll just set it to 0. I'm going to change it anyway. In fact, why didn't I change that? Oh, I forgot this line right here. Stars to draw is set to 1. Well, thank goodness that that Visual Studio caught my error here. So I can say over here, stars to draw. I was supposed to assign that to 1 right here, but I forgot. I'm speaking too quickly, thinking too fast. So spaces to draw is equal to half the user input. Good. Stars to draw, we're going to assign that to 1. Yep, good. Then we have a while statement that says while the stars to draw is less than or equal to the user input. Yep, that's what I've got over here. So what do I do? Well, okay, if that's true, then set the counter to 0. Okay, so we'll set the counter to 0. What do I do next? Oh, look at this. Here's that shape again, the diamond shape. Notice the path. If this is true, go down here, go back over here. Ah, that's a repetition structure because I keep on looping. While the counter is less than spaces to draw. Okay, while the counter is less than spaces to draw. Then we're going to do the following here. While the counter is less than spaces to draw, append a space to the output. Okay, so what is the output? Well, the output in this case is our label, this guy right here, this label right here. So it says append, which means add to. So I take whatever the old label is, and I'm going to append to it whatever the new label is, and I'll say plus, and then a space. So this guy is saying, where am I? Over here. Append a space to the output. Well, our output is the label. So take the old label, concatenate that with a space, that's what it means to append to, and now the new updated version of the label is whatever it was before plus a space, or concatenating a space. Now what am I supposed to do? Increment the counter? Okay. So over here, we'll just say simply counter. I'll use this shortcut method over here. Counter plus equals 1 just simply means increment the counter by 1. All right, so I've taken care of this while loop. Outside of the while loop, I had this. If this is false, then you're going to do this. Now, this does not belong to the while statement. All this stuff is part of the while statement. If this is false, this is not part of the while statement, to set the counter to 0. Okay, so that means going over here and set the counter to 0. What else? Let's see here. So I set the counter to 0. Oh, look at this. Another repetition structure. So we'll just simply use a while statement to say while the counter is less than stars to draw. Okay, while the counter is less than stars to draw. Open and close curly braces. While the counter is less than stars to draw, append a star to the output. Okay, so what is the output? So this is going to be the new version of the output. Take the old version of the output, concatenate a star. So whatever this is, concatenate a star, and now the new version, or the new updated version of the label is this. Okay, what else am I supposed to do? Increment the counter. All right, so we'll say counter plus equals 1. All right, so now I finished that while statement. This, when it's false, this does not belong to this while statement. This is outside of the while statement. So what does it say to do? Decrement spaces to draw. Okay, so outside of the while statement, decrement, oops, sorry, spaces to draw. So spaces to draw minus equals 1. To decrement typically means to subtract by 1. Increment stars to draw by 2. Okay, so stars to draw, we're going to increment that by 2. So there's the shortcut approach. That means increment this thing by 2. Okay, what else? Go to the next line. Well, what does it mean to go to the next line for a label? Well, if we want the label to go to the next line, we'll do this. We'll say take that output, which is our label, and we're going to update it. What we're going to do is whatever you currently have, I'm also going to have you go to the beginning of the next line. So I think that was environment dot new line. Ah, there it is, new line. So what this thing is going to do is it's going to say whatever you currently have, go to the beginning of the next line. So the cursor is blinking at the beginning of the next line for our output, and label result is in fact our output. Let me save my work and go back over here. Then what happens, this goes back into this while statement. And if it is true that there are stars to draw, right? So if it is true that in fact there are stars to draw, because the stars to draw is less than or equal to the user input, if that's true, we do that whole process all over again. Once it's false, then we do this outside of that repetition structure. So spaces to draw is equal to 1. Well, first of all, let me get outside that repetition structure, which is this guy right here. I'm going to copy this. Oops, sorry. Let me copy this. And let me just follow this dot all the way over here. And I'm going to put a comment over here. That way I know, well, this dotted line surely helps me out, but I like to do this as well. This is old school programming here where that curly bracket belongs to this while statement. So it's just another way of saying, hey, I can enter over here. The code that I'm about to type is outside of this while statement. And what am I supposed to be typing? Well, according to this, spaces to draw equals 1. Okay, so we are supposed to assign spaces to draw. We're supposed to assign 1 to that. Now what do we do? Stars to draw is going to be assigned user input minus 2. Okay, so stars to draw is going to be assigned user input minus 2. You may be thinking, well, how do you know to do that? You don't. You're an intro student. What we're doing is we're just simply taking a more advanced programmer who gives you this flowchart, and your job is to implement it. So you may not understand why you're doing this, why you're doing that. That's okay. Don't worry about that. We're just simply implementers right now. We're not actually the author of this particular program. Okay, so we've just done this part, and then now, oh, we have this shape. Is that an if statement? Is that a selection structure or a repetition structure? So let's see here. If I go into here, if it's true, then I do this, and I go back over here. Ah, do you see that shape? It's a repetition structure. We're repeating this. So this is a while statement. While the stars to draw is greater than or equal to 1. Okay, so I'll go over here. While the, well, first of all, let me just make sure that I'm, yeah, that's right. While the stars to draw is greater than or equal to 1. Okay, greater than, oops, sorry, greater than or equal to 1. Open and close curly braces. You know what? I have a feeling that this is going to be a lot of lines of code. So I better just take this, copy it, put a comment over here, and put that there. That way, as I type more and more code, I know that this curly braces belongs to this. Boy, these dash lines in Visual Studio 2017 also really help me out. Okay, so I am now in the while statement. If this is true, where stars to draw is greater than 1, so stars to draw greater than 1. If that's true, set the counter to 0. Okay, so counter, we're going to assign that to 0 to it. And then what? Ah, look at this. That diamond shape in this case is representing a loop. While the counter is less than spaces to draw. While the counter is less than or equal to spaces to draw. Open and close curly braces. Oh, I said greater than or equal to while the counter is less than. It doesn't say less than or equal to, so sorry about that. Let me get rid of that. While the counter is less than spaces to draw, then what do? Append a space to the output. Okay, so that means LBL, result.text, we need to append a space to it, so that means LBL, get the old version of the label, specifically the text property, and concatenate a space. All right, append a space to the output. So append means add to. So I'm going to take whatever you are, I'm going to add to or concatenate a space, and now the new updated version of our label is this. What am I supposed to do now? Increment the counter. Okay, so that means over here we'll just simply say counter plus equals 1, because I'm going to increment it by 1. And then we keep on doing that. Once we are finished, once that's false, that the counter is no longer less than spaces to draw, then we do this outside of the while statement. So counter is going to be assigned 0. So outside of the while statement, we're going to say counter is going to be assigned 0. What do I do after that? Ah, looks like another repetition structure. Counter less than stars to draw. While counter is less than stars to draw. And the only reason why I knew that this was a repetition structure is I can just follow the arrows and see the loop that it makes. Okay, so while the counter is less than stars to draw. While the counter is less than stars to draw. Open and close curly braces. Okay, if that's true, append a star to the output. Okay, so that means here's our output, and we need to append, which means to add to a star. Take whatever the old output is, add to it a star. Well, that's really not, I shouldn't say add. In this context, it's concatenation operator to put together. But I'm just using that verbiage loosely. We're going to take this and we're going to put that with this so that the output is now updated. What am I supposed to do? After that, increment the counter. Okay, so I take counter plus equals 1 to increment that counter. Looking good? All right, we keep on doing that, and then when this is no longer true, outside of the while statement, we're supposed to do this. Okay, so, oops, sorry, just after this while statement, we're supposed to do what now? Whoops, sorry, I moved my cursor in the wrong direction. There we go. Increment spaces to draw, okay? So spaces to draw, increment it. Beautiful. What else? Decrement stars to draw by 2. Okay. So stars to draw, decrement it by 2. What else am I supposed to do? Go to the next row. Well, in Visual Studio or in Visual C#, to go to the next row specifically means we're going to take that label. Wherever your cursor is blinking, we got to get that thing to the next row. So that means we are going to concatenate environment.newLine. Go to the beginning of the next row. That's what this guy is going to do. Okay, so when you're done with that, then we keep on doing this while statement over and over and over again. Finally, when it's false, end of program. Wow, I think we're done. Wouldn't that be wonderful if this thing worked? Right off the bat, after typing all this and speaking so quickly. Okay, so first of all, let me save, and then I'm going to run. Okay, I'm crossing my fingers. First of all, let's just assume that the user really is going to enter an odd number. That could be another video lesson to verify that the user in fact enters an odd number, and if they enter an even number, we can display a message box or something like that. But really, the concept here is taking a flowchart with repetition structure stuff, and let's see if we can get this program to work. So let me type in 7, draw a diamond. Oh, look, isn't that beautiful? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep, 7 rows. Let's see what 15 looks like. Is that going to be able to accommodate it? Oh, wait a minute. It looks like it took the old display or the old output and it didn't clear it before drawing the new stuff. Oh, wait a minute. I told you guys that I would get back to this. Clear the previous entry. Now I know why that's supposed to be there. We're supposed to get rid of the stuff in the label that may have already been displayed from the previous execution by the user, and then that way it clears the screen. So in other words, we got to, if there's anything in here, we got to clear it. Okay, so let me go back over here to our code. When am I supposed to do that? I'm supposed to do that before my declarations. Okay, so I'll go over here, and I'll just simply say lbl.text, quote, quote. Right, so what is this thing going to do? Clear the screen, or i.e. the output. Right, we're clearing the output, which is our label. Okay, save our program. Now let's see what happens when I hit start. Let me try 3. Whoops, sorry, 3. Okay, there's a little tiny diamond. All right, let's type in 15 and see what happens. It should clear the screen. Oh, beautiful. It cleared the screen. It draws our diamond. Notice how everything is proportional. See, that's why you want a monospaced font, so that everything is spaced correctly. And then I can just simply enter another number, like 9, say, for example. Oh, looks good. I like it. Now, I said to enter a number from 1 to 15, but I mean, there's nothing that stops me from entering 17 or 19 or a bigger odd number. And that's a later program for us to for the developer to restrict the user input. But boy, this is great. When we close this program, we were able to take a flowchart like this. I gave you the answer. This is really the answer. You guys are acting as translators, taking this flowchart information and turning it into the C# code necessary to make this dream come true of the developer, of the author. See, that's what happens. As a programmer, you typically wear 2 hats. Either you wear the author's hat or the implementer's hat. The author does this. The implementer does this. In a smaller company, you do both. You do this and this. In a bigger company, you either do this, like that's the big guy who's making $150,000 maybe, to do this type of author, creating the big picture of your program. And then an implementer does this. Doesn't get as much money, but still gets a good wage being an implementer, right? Usually within about 5 to 6 years, you'd be making over $100,000 or close to it as a good implementer. All right, and that is it. I am so happy that that went really well. So probably what's going to happen is when you see this requirement, it's not going to have this, because I'm trying to change this from C++ to C#. So I got to change that to C++. That already is a C#. The pictures are going to be different. The pictures are going to have this guy right here. Whoops, sorry, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to take a picture of this and put it over here and maybe give another sample run. And I think that's it. All right. So this is Professor Robert Solis. I hope this video lesson was helpful. Have a good day. See you next time.